Welcome to this breaking news explainer. Right now, the entire world is watching an incredibly fragile diplomatic tightrope act. We are tracking some massive, rapid developments regarding a potential peace agreement between the United States and Iran. Now, this isn't just a distant political story. This has huge global implications. We're talking international security, and yes, even the price you're going to pay for fuel at your local pump. Today, we're going to break down exactly what's actually being negotiated, the political shockwaves it's sending straight through Washington, and what it all means for the global economy as this situation literally develops by the minute. To really grasp where we stand at this exact second, let's listen to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Speaking to reporters in Delhi, he said, "We thought we might have some news last night, maybe today." You can really hear the intense urgency there, right? Plus that cautious optimism radiating out of Washington. There's this palpable feeling that a major breakthrough could be imminent. The U.S. administration clearly believes they are right on the precipice of finalizing a deal. They're basically telegraphing to the world that an announcement could drop at any given moment. But, well, as we so often see in geopolitics, one side's optimism doesn't always tell the whole story. And that brings us perfectly to the dramatic tension at the heart of this breaking news. We have to contrast Washington's rapid timeline with the official word coming straight out of Tehran. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman, Ismail Baqai, he did confirm that a conclusion has been reached on a large portion of the issues, but he sharply pushed back on the timeline. He stated plainly, to say that this means the signing of an agreement is imminent, no one can make such a claim. This stark contrast in messaging really sets the stage for us today. Real progress has undeniably been made, for sure, but getting across that final finish line, that's proving to be incredibly delicate.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1. Inside the proposed agreement. What is actually on the table?
According to reports, there are three main pillars to this Memorandum of Understanding as it stands right now. First up, a 60-day extension of the ceasefire. This essentially hits pause on active hostilities to give everyone some much-needed breathing room. Second, and this is an absolute game-changer for the global market, reopening the Strait of Hormuz. And third, establishing a framework for future ongoing negotiations regarding Iran's nuclear program. Now, it's really important to keep in mind here, this is not a comprehensive final peace treaty. No, it's more like a preliminary framework. It's designed to de-escalate the immediate tension while setting the stage for the really heavy, complex talks down the road. Let's talk about why that second pillar, reopening the Strait of Hormuz, is absolutely critical. It all comes down to one massive number, 20%. The Strait of Hormuz is this incredibly narrow, vital maritime bottleneck. As things stand, 20% of the entire world's oil and liquefied natural gas passes right through that specific waterway. So, with Iran blocking it, the global energy supply chain has basically been choked off. Reopening this strait isn't just a win for the region, it's practically a requirement to stabilize the global economy and cool off those soaring energy costs we've all been feeling. Now, on the security side of things, the stakes can be summed up by another striking figure: 440 kilograms. When this conflict started, Iran was estimated to possess roughly 440 kilograms of uranium that was enriched up to 60% purity. To put that into perspective for a second, 60% enrichment is dangerously close to the 90% purity you need for weapons-grade material. The theoretical capability to just quickly bridge that gap and build a nuclear weapon, that's exactly why that third pillar of the agreement, the framework for nuclear negotiations, is an absolute priority for the U.S. and its allies. But in the interest of getting the full picture, we have to look around stated position too. Speaking on state television, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said, "We are ready to assure the world that we are not after a nuclear weapon." Tehran has consistently maintained that its nuclear program is strictly for peaceful civilian purposes. Now, U.S. media reports suggest this proposed deal might eventually see Iran handing over its highly enriched uranium. But getting from those verbal assurances to actual verified action, well, that's exactly what the future framework negotiations are going to have to iron out. So, moving on to Section 2, complications and delays. Why the wait? Right now, we're seeing breaking reports from U.S. intelligence via CBS News, and it points to a massive logistical nightmare. Intelligence suggests that Iran's Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei is currently holed up in an undisclosed location. He was reportedly injured in an Israeli strike on the very first day of the war, which is the same strike that killed his father and predecessor. Because he's hidden away right now, communication between the Supreme Leader and his negotiating envoys is incredibly difficult. You simply cannot finalize a treaty like this without the Supreme Leader's absolute final sign-off. So this physical disconnect is a major reason why the pacing has stalled. Plus, this mooted deal basically kicks some of the absolute thorniest issues right down the road.
We're talking about the scope and timing of Iranian sanctions relief, the release of frozen Iranian funds, and Washington's specific demands for Iran to curb its nuclear ambitions. None of these are fully settled yet. By pushing these incredibly complex issues to the side for now, negotiators are desperately trying to secure an immediate ceasefire, but they are absolutely leaving some potential landmines for future diplomatic talks.
This brings us to Section 3, Divided Political Reactions, the U.S. Domestic Fallout.
This reported deal has actually created a really fascinating split right down the middle of the Republican Party. On one hand, you've got President Trump. He recently suggested that the sides were closing in on a deal, though he did tell negotiators not to rush it. He's publicly stated that a deal with Iran will either be great and meaningful, or it just won't happen at all. And he's outright dismissed critics of the negotiations as losers. But on the flip side of this divide, a lot of those vocal critics are actually prominent members of his own party over in the Senate. They are arguing that the terms being discussed are just way too lenient on Tehran.
And honestly, the pushback from those Senate Republicans is severe. Senator Ted Cruz bluntly called the potential agreement a disastrous mistake. Senator Roger Wicker, who chairs the Armed Services Committee, warns that a 60-day ceasefire would essentially mean that everything the U.S. military accomplished during Operation Epic Fury would be for naught. Then you have Senator Lindsey Graham, typically a really close ally of the president, criticizing any deal that leaves Iran looking like a dominant force in the Middle East. He even went so far as to say it makes you wonder why the war started to begin with. So the domestic political pressure against this framework, it is immense.
Let's look at Section 4, Timeline of the Conflict, the Path to Negotiations.
Let's do a quick rewind to see how we got here. This rapid escalation really kicked off on February 28th when the U.S. and Israel launched wide-ranging strikes on Iran, which basically sparked conflict across the whole region. Moving into March, Iran retaliated. They attacked U.S.-allied Gulf states and executed that critical closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which sent global oil prices through the roof. Now, a ceasefire was agreed to back in early April, but the conflict just evolved into a massive economic standoff. The U.S. set up a strict blockade of Iranian ports, and President Trump has vowed that this blockade will remain in full force until a final agreement is officially signed and certified.
Section 5, Global Market Impacts. Time for the economic reality check. The financial world is, largely a machine that runs on anticipation. On Monday, we saw oil prices fall sharply, while Asian stock markets actually went up. And here's the crazy part. This wasn't driven by a signed contract. It was driven entirely by the hope and the expectation of a peace agreement that would finally reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The market is just desperate for stability right now. Traders are basically preemptively pricing in the return of that 20% of the world's oil supply.
But we do have to temper that market optimism with some pretty harsh logistical reality. Listen to what Lars Jensen had to say. He's the CEO of the Spucci Maritime and a former shipping director. He warns that even in an absolute best-case scenario, say a deal gets signed tomorrow, the shipping industry's recovery is still going to take months. He pointed out that the industry remains cautious and hesitant to make any major operational changes right away. You literally can't just flip a switch and instantly fix global supply chains. Getting them back into their pre-crisis shape takes an immense amount of time, and it requires proven, lasting security. So that brings us to the ultimate question as this breaking news continues to unfold. Will a preliminary deal actually be finalized in time to stabilize the Middle East in the global economy? Or will the intense domestic political pushback in Washington, combined with those severe communication breakdowns over in Tehran, fracture this incredibly fragile peace before pen ever meets paper? The stakes literally could not be higher. We're going to be watching these developments incredibly closely, and we will be right here to bring you the next explainer the second the facts hit the ground.